Concealed carried firearms will be allowed in a number of previously prohibited spaces, at least for now. It took the U.S. Supreme Court to get involved, and St. Lawrence County's attorney is part of the legal team that just got the win out of Washington. Here's 7 News reporter Thomas Caffarella.
It's not every day that you have the United States Supreme Court agree with you.
St. Lawrence County's attorney Stephen Button became affiliated with Gun Owners of America during their multi-year legal battle with New York State, challenging the state's Concealed Carry Improvement Act. The act came with new qualifications for people to obtain a pistol permit, including having applicants prove good moral character and having to submit social media accounts to be reviewed. The organization called the Concealed Carry Improvement Act unconstitutional. In court 2 years ago, U.S. Northern District Judge Glenn Sotheby sided in large part with the Gun Owners of America. The state appealed to the Second Circuit Court of Appeals. It sided in large part with the state. Gun Owners of America took it to the U.S. Supreme Court, where just a couple weeks ago, it overturned the Second Circuit Court of Appeals decision, sending it back to the appeals court for another look.
We're very positive, we're very optimistic that the Second Circuit has gotten a message from the Supreme Court that they were not happy with the decision that we received.
What does that mean for New Yorkers? Button says until the Second Circuit issues a new ruling, Judge Sotheby's decision will stand, meaning the vast majority of prohibited spaces previously upheld by the Second Circuit are no longer valid. Those schools, hospitals, and government buildings will be off limits to lawful concealed carry, where lawful concealed carry can apparently happen now include bars, restaurants, churches, and more. Button also says providing social media information is struck down as well.
Right now, we're back to where we were as if the Second Circuit had never issued its decision.
Button hopes the Second Circuit will go with Judge Sotheby's decision. And Button is involved in the legal fight because he feels the state should abide by the Constitution when it comes to firearms. And the legal decision will have implications on St. Lawrence County and its residents too. Thomas Caffarella, 7 News.